My name is Suvin. I lead the systems engineering or pre-sales team for Palo Alto Networks for South of India, and I've been with Palo Alto Networks for 8 years. So if I were to talk about AI, right, the first slide that I had was a slide that showed a movie. How many of you have seen the movie The Bourne Identity? The Bourne Identity? At least I see around 40-50% of you, right? The first scene where Jason Bourne appears at the airport, he flashes his passport, and the next second, the CIA that's actually monitoring for the passport picks up that passport number from somewhere in the US and then zones in on where that person is, right? That was what cybersecurity was a few years ago. Fast forward from 2002, 2003, I firmly believe that movies are an indication of the extent of our imagination. The most recent Mission Impossible movie that came out, Dead Reckoning Part 1, there's another movie that came out called Heart of Stone, which has Gal Gadot in it. Both of them actually showcase the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence to a large extent. So if you remember the airport scene in Dead Reckoning, the CIA and all its force had no clue whom to look for. They were looking at how the person would look like, and there was no way they could identify who the person was despite knowing how he exactly looked. There was no way a passport could have worked. There was no way a signature could have worked. That's the state of cybersecurity today, especially with the large language models and machine learning and AI that's currently on the horizon. So let's take a step back. We heard from Mr. Vishal Salvi, we heard from Mr. Jackson Fernandez, from Mr. Sridhar Govardhan and the rest of the panel, that AI is here to stay, and within the next 6 months, we might end up in a situation where it will change dramatically the way that we do work. Let me just, give me 1 second, let me see if I can get the screen to back work. So this is the first slide that I had. So if you look at the movie Heart of Stone, I'll just go back to the context, right? It actually talks about a situation where a quantum computer has all the data in the world fed into it. And there is a statement in that movie that says that this engine is capable of crashing stock markets and bringing down planes. So if you look at it, if you look at the amount of data that is processed and the data that flows between aviation systems, it's actually possible to even today throw a plane off course. Last week, I read a situation where GPS coordinates were actually reconfigured, and at least 15 airplanes deviated from their existing flight path to something totally different. So that's the power of data that we are talking about. And if you look at it from our perspective today, and I'm just going back to the conversation that the panel had, the type of large language models and the data that we are feeding into it. I think it was Mr. Sridhar who spoke about how any kind of data that you upload into a large language model is exposing your own organization's data. So if, for example, I decide to put up my organization's data sheets and private intellectual information into a large language model that is open for public use, chances are that it can be misused. So when this LLM wave actually hit a large number of our customers and the world as a whole, the first question that a large number of customers came up to us and asked us was, how can we secure our data against being exposed to these large language models? Because if you go to the fine print in OpenAI, you go to the fine print in Bard, they will always tell you as the smallest possible fine print that the data that you provide that large language model can be used for their own internal training. So which means that organizations today need to look at all of the AI that is out there today from 3 perspectives. The first perspective is to make sure that you manage access to all the AI apps that are out there. You need to understand the usage of AI in your organizations, be it a banking organization. We heard how any emails that are being written today are being written by these large language models. In case these emails contain confidential information, it is irrespective of the organization or the field that you belong to. It can happen in banking, it can happen in IT/ITS, it can happen in retail or manufacturing. So understanding the usage of AI apps within your organization is step 1. Creating prescriptive usage controls for the AI apps, making sure that your employees your practitioners do not share any kind of information to these applications is step 2. And the third step with respect to these applications themselves are making sure that you control access to any of the applications that you're not aware of. So most of the perimeter security controls, I'll go into that in a bit, but if you move down to the data part of it, you control access to the application, but I'm sure that your own employees, your practitioners will not allow you to say, I will block access to all AI apps. Because if you decide to block access to AI apps, it basically means you're bringing down the momentum of the organization towards business objectives. So which means that the development of the business itself can come down. So which means that what is step 2? You need to allow applications to be accessed. Let's assume that you have a sign up with OpenAI or Bard or whatever be the large language model or generative AI that you're using, but you control the amount of data that is actually exposed to that app. For example, if you are a banking organization, do not allow any kind of credit card information to flow to that large language model. Because with prompt engineering, what we've seen in the recent past is somebody was able to trick a specific large language model into revealing personal credit card information. So if you're a retail organization, do not allow your employees to submit any kind of financial numbers that pertain to your organization. If you're an engineering organization, do not allow blueprints to be uploaded to the large language model, or for that matter, any external AI source. So securing access to the applications, securing data and the type of data that is sent into these AI models, and third and most importantly, you cannot get into a gunfight with a knife. If there is AI on the other side, you have to use AI on your own. And that was also something that the panel before me actually spoke at depth about. You will have to use similar AI, artificial intelligence models to do precision engineering to predict and stop attacks. So that's also something that I will cover in a bit of detail. I know we're running short of time. So this is an example. You will have, if you go back into your organizations today and take a poll, go to your network perimeters, understand what kind of applications are being used, go to your proxies, ask the security administrator what kind of URLs that are related to AI are being used. You can get a list of the applications that are present in your organization today. And once you get that data, make sure that you allow access only to the applications that you trust. Because every application has its own set of dependencies. If you go up to huggingface.co, you will see a list of at least 1,000 applications that are there for every possible permutation combination. Make sure that you allow access only to the applications that you trust implicitly. The second part, you know that you have these applications that you need to allow. You need to make sure that the data that is getting exposed to these applications is controlled. I gave you the example of banking information and personal identifiable information that goes on to the applications. Now let's get into the cybersecurity or the prevention or protection side. Artificial intelligence, all the models that you're seeing across the globe today are capable of delivering protection, are capable of detecting any attack or incident within the organization as fast as possible, are capable of responding with accuracy, are capable of remediating to the fastest with a great MTTR possibility, and are capable of doing any kind of automation that is needed to make your organization secure against any kind of attack. And let's look at a couple of examples, right? Let's flash back to 20 years ago, where every single threat that was seen across the world was blocked using a signature. If you look at a signature is a 1:1 match against something that has been seen before. It is very difficult to block a new threat with an existing signature because there's no reference for it. Going back to the Bourne identity story, you don't know the passport number of Jason Bourne, you cannot actually stop him or find out when he is getting through an airport. So which basically means you need to start looking at machine learning models and deep learning models. And what's the contrast between machine learning and deep learning models? Machine learning models are trained either using supervised or unsupervised on specific data sets. Deep learning models are trained on entire sets of data to figure out differences in behaviors or patterns. So when you invest in technology, when you start working with your security practitioners and decision makers, figure out to what extent machine learning and deep learning are being used for your protections. And let me give you an example. Every single facet of security can be sort of pushed up or made better with machine learning. I'll give you an example. Let's take a phishing attack. We spoke about business email. I think the panel spoke about business email compromise. A phishing attack against a targeted phishing attack against someone large or significant in an organization happens with a totally new phishing link. If you decide to use a traditional URL filtering solution, which does not have machine learning capabilities, chances are access to that URL will be allowed. If you've got machine learning built in, to make sure that any new URL being requested is analyzed with a precision algorithm that can detect and predict whether the new URL is malicious or not, you've got a higher chance of stopping the user from actually accessing that link. Let's look at an exploitation attack against a known vulnerability. Any kind of new crafting of packets that can happen against a vulnerability. The more that you use machine learning against any of these, I'm sure that a lot of you would have heard of command and control exposures and mechanisms to reach out to external destinations. Attackers are using various methods to actually change the IP addresses or domains that are being reached out to. If you use legacy mechanisms, you'll never get close to what you need to do. And if I were to call out where you would need to use, right? So, and how the entire security strategy of an organization should be, you pass through the attack lifecycle. This is something that is common knowledge. The better you prevent, the lesser that you need to detect and respond. Make sure that you've got the maximum possible machine learning algorithms and systems that are protective in nature, running towards the left, towards the earlier part of the attack lifecycle. And as you go towards the rightmost where the actioning on objectives happen, you've got people actually looking at the data that is being generated by each of these systems. So I'll not take more than 5 minutes. I know we are sort of running out of time. I wanted to give you a real world example, which is something what Palo Alto Networks as an organization and how we've been able to achieve the kind of security outcomes that we have with a combination of all of these technical jargon, so to speak. So today at Palo Alto Networks, our SOC is possibly, our organization is possibly one of the largest organizations, the most high-profile organizations that is being subjected to attacks on a day-in, day-out basis. We have a system of processes that are currently running, each of them with the right amount of machine learning, which is both precision-led and prescriptive, that allows us to reduce the attack surface to a large extent and respond to an incident with great levels of accuracy. And to what level have we gone? Today in Palo Alto Networks, in one day, we actually see 36 billion events. We bring those 36 billion events down to 11 million alerts. And out of the 11 million alerts, we bring them down to 133 incidents that we need to respond to. Out of the 133 incidents that we need to respond to, 119 incidents are partially automated and 14 are fully automated. And out of that, only 7 incidents require the manual intervention of a security practitioner to look at the incident and decide what needs to be done. So all of this is possible using a combination of technologies that bring in the right resources with skill sets and the right kind of technologies with a good backing of machine learning across the board. So that's it from my perspective in terms of machine learning and cyber security in the age of AI. I will be around in case you have any questions with respect to how we can help you or how we need to deliver this better. Please feel free to reach out to us. I'd like to thank c0c0n, the organizers, and the entire force behind this entire conference. I think this is one of the largest that India has seen. Thank you once again for the opportunity to partner with c0c0n. Thank you.